subscribe.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast. We had some technical difficulties earlier. We recorded this morning, which I was not in my peak physical conditions this morning.
After a long Nashville night.
Nashville, yep, it'll get you.
Yeah.
But here we are, take two for the this week, which is actually next week because of when we're recording it. But this week is the Home Fire Sprinkler Week. It is a initiative put on by the Home Fire Sprinkler Coalition and Home Fire Sprinkler Coalition of Canada to bring awareness to residential home fire sprinklers, the importance of them, debunk myths and stuff like that. So I'm here with Shawn Mahoney. Shawn Mahoney's an engineer with NFPA, but let's let him pump his own tires. Shawn, how's it going today?
Good. How about you?
Good. What do you think of the event? Now that it's officially come to a close, what did you think of the show?
It was awesome. I mostly was on the trade show floor, and it was awesome. A lot of people, a lot of good conversations, talking about NFPA Link. Everybody loves it.
Everybody is loving it.
Love the feedback that we're getting, the constructive feedback as well. So it's good. I love talking to people who use it because I use it all the time. I'm in my own little bubble, so when I get to talk to people.
I like that you said I like the feedback, and then you said the constructive feedback, which is the negative feedback, but in a nice way of saying it. Yeah. I never thought I would be a guy to switch. I'm a pen and paper kind of old school guy. I like still flipping through the books. If I need to find something fast, I'll still, I can almost go to that section for the most part, like just finger depth basically. I can't do that on the computer yet, but I'm trying.
I'm always traveling and always have my phone. People always ask me questions. I'm always looking it up on my phone.
That's fair. Okay, before we squirrel and divert like we always do, tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do with NFPA.
Yeah, so I'm an engineer, fire protection engineer in our technical services group. I do a lot of work with a lot of our products and things coming out of NFPA and fire protection systems, building life safety, all of that stuff.
You had a lot to do with NFPA Link and kicking it off, and now
our group in tech services, we do a lot of the population of the content, the technical information that goes into Link. So that's where our position is. While there's another group that does a lot of the development work on the actual platform itself. We're like the super users, right? We're using it all the time, and then we're also developing all the content that goes into it, and helping with new features and all that stuff.
I think the last time we talked, you were talking about the fire protection handbook. And when/if that is going to make it into NFPA Link, is that?
Yeah, there's discussions about putting other content into Link and what it looks like, and I know that the fire protection handbook is a big one. There's so much information in that. We updated it. I believe it was 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, and we hadn't updated it for like 10 or 13 years before that.
2012.
Yeah, I think so.
2012, and then now it's the 21st edition, but it was released in, I think, 2022 or 2023.
Yeah, and there's so much information in that, and making that more easy to, well, first of all, digital, because right now it's available only print version, but making that digitally available would be really great. And I know there's discussions about looking at putting that in there.
It is, boy, it's a hefty.
Yeah, but it's a good introduction to like everything, and it deep dives into a lot of things too. Everything's in there.
It's essentially a lot of handbook content jam packed into one. It's not. It doesn't replace NFPA 13. It doesn't replace NFPA 20, but it does kind of more of, I would say, the handbook information and dives deeper into that kind of stuff. It's an excellent book.
I think it fills the cracks, and it's different because like. You look at NFPA 13. If you don't know how a sprinkler system works, it means nothing to you, right? You don't understand the what they're talking about, how everything's laid out, because it's just the requirements. But if you went into chapter 14 or 15 or whatever in the fire protection handbook, it goes through what all the components of a sprinkler system is, what the design looks like. It helps you get an understanding of everything.
General understanding, which is good. It does a general understanding of a lot
broad, basic things.
But the topic for today is residential sprinklers.
Yeah.
And kind of going through NFPA 13, NFPA 13R, and 13D, and kind of, I won't say dispelling a bunch of myths, but just clarifying a bunch of things. Because if you are a 13 commercial guy on the tools and designer, and you're tasked with a single 1 or 2 family dwelling, or a low rise apartment building up to 4 stories, 60 feet. We talked about that earlier.
What is it?
A lot of things can change, and there's a lot of cost savings that are associated with. So essentially, let's kind of talk about the differences between 13, 13R, and 13D from a protection standpoint. What's the intention of an NFPA 13 system?
Yeah, so an NFPA 13 system, the goal of 13, if you look in Chapter 1, right, it's property protection and life safety.
Yeah.
Right, so you're both protecting the property that the system is in and protecting those occupants.
Siren's going off. Hope that building's sprinkled.
Yeah,
Go on.
hopefully. And 13R system is a system that is providing protection with most of its goal being towards life safety. We talked about the scope. It only applies up to 4 stories in height, 60 feet for residential occupancy. So we're talking smaller apartment buildings, hotels, motels, but providing that life safety.
Right.
And then a 13D system is only designed for life safety. And one of the other goals in mind with 13D requirements is how do we make this as cost effective as possible, because we want to make it accessible to everybody. If we can bring the cost down and prioritize life safety and the cost, we can get it in more homes and make it more accessible. So that's where you see a lot of the requirements of weighing what is the cost versus that benefit towards life safety. And again, the only goal for a 13D system is to get the occupants out of the building before flashover occurs.
And like we talked about before, one of the key things that we need to be aware of as fire, sprinkler, and fire protection professionals in general is not seeing a 13R or 13D building burnt to the ground after a fire and calling it a failure.
Yeah.
Because that's not the intention of that. You see it on LinkedIn all the time. People are like, oh, this building was sprinklered, but it shouldn't have fallen to the ground. Like my comment every time, were there any fatalities or injuries? No, that is not a system failure. That is exactly what it's supposed to do. It's an egress assistant at that. Give us some more time to allow the people with limited mobility issues and regular mobility the opportunity to get out of the house alive.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And we get that a lot with 13R systems specifically and 13D, because the thing is, you don't have attic protection.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's where the big thing happens, and you get those big fires where the fire gets up into an attic, and then there's no protection, and essentially the building's gone.
Yep.
But everybody can still get out of the building. They're all being protected by sprinklers, and depending on where that fire started, it's probably been burning for a while before it got up there.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So starting off like we talked about a little bit earlier, starting off with water supplies, starting at the in respect to the new layout of NFPA 13, where you start at essentially the definitions. We're not going to do the definitions, but we're going to go into the water supplies and work basically to the back end of the system. So water supplies. What are the differences between an NFPA 13, 13R, and 13D water supply requirements?
So there's some big differences. This is where I think the biggest differences are in these systems. So NFPA 13 system, we'll talk just residential. And I have this fact sheet in front of me that we put together that I think is really helpful. That I'll just plug real quick. If you go to NFPA search 13 versus 13R versus 13D, I did a couple blog series on these differences that we're talking about, and we put together I put together a fact sheet, which is a table for residential design, shows you all the differences between 13R, 13 and 13D. So we'll kind of go through that. But yeah, water supply, one of the biggest differences. So a 13 system, your water supply requirements for residential is going to be 30-minute water
Minimum
supply.
30 minutes.
Minimum 30, could go up from that, right? And 13R is still that 13-minute or 30 minutes as well. When you go to a 13D system, it's only a 10-minute water supply duration, but it could even go down to 7 minutes. So if you're a single story, less than 2,000 square feet, you go down to a 7-minute water supply. Now, most people would be like, okay, that doesn't impact systems as much, especially on residential, because you might just have a domestic water supply.
That's right, yeah.
But what happens with a 13D system, and we see more common in 13D systems, is you put a tank and a pump.
Yep.
Then you don't have to worry about backflow prevention. You don't have to worry about connections to municipal water supply.
Yep. 13D
allows you to do a tank and a pump. Also says it doesn't have to be a listed tank or pump. You don't have to install it per NFPA 22 or NFPA 20. There's some guidelines on it's got to be a 220 pump where it's got to be installed.
That's a newer requirement, though.
Yeah, I believe that was the 2022 edition, which rolled that requirement out. But just providing more robustness to the tank or to the pump itself. But yeah, so the tank doesn't have to be that big, right? We're looking at, for example, you're going to have 2 heads, which we'll talk about later. The design, 2 heads flowing, 13 GPM each. So 26 gallons per minute for 10 minutes. You're talking about 260 gallons of water that you need to have. So it's really not that much. Put that in the basement. That's where you're seeing.
You get a couple of those. Essentially, it's comparing the sizes. You're looking at a couple extra hot water tanks in your basement.
Yeah.
For fire protection.
Yeah, that's it. It's not a lot, and that gets rid of a lot of the headaches that you might have when you connect the domestic water, which we can also talk about some of the 13D allowances in there to kind of help alleviate some of the backflow prevention requirements and all of that stuff. But that's the biggest thing is that water supply. Only 10 minutes. You're only required 10 minutes because you're going to be notified of a fire through your smoke alarms, and you're going to get out of the building. 10 minutes is all you're really going to need.
Pretty good.
Yeah, 10 minutes is hopefully more than enough. But then those smaller buildings, you're going to need less time. So 1 story, 200 square foot or 2,000 square foot, you only need 7.
Yeah, and I mean, to compound, when you said 260 gallons a minute, that's based off of the design requirements for an NFPA 13D system, which instead of it being a 1,500 square foot or 900 square foot circle sprinklers, depending on that curve, area reduction curve.
It's a table, man.
Table. Oh, table, man. Okay, I'll have to check out the 2025. Did that change in 2025
or
2022? Oh, thank goodness.
22.
Oh, well, I missed it.
They went from the curve to the tables.
Awesome.
So single point density. Yeah.
Oh, single point density, but I'm talking the area reduction.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
yeah, so the area reduction. Whew, that was scary.
All right.
Oh, it scared me for a minute there. I thought I was wrong on. So, card was too full, so we're starting again here. We just finished talking about how I was, not that you were wrong, I wasn't wrong about the area reduction.
Well, it was a misunderstanding.
It was a misunderstanding, yeah, I guess. I was right, he was wrong. Anyways, no, it wasn't, nobody was wrong. It was a misunderstanding. So we were talking about the design requirements for a 13D system, and the reason it's only 26 gallons a minute is because it's a 2 sprinkler design area as opposed to a 1,500, etc. So going into the 30-minute water supply requirement for 13R, that's a 4 sprinkler design.
Yeah, so both 13 and 13R for residential is going to be the 4-head design.
Yep. And that's within the dwelling units.
Yeah, so we're just talking the residential part in the dwelling units. So that's 4 heads or sprinklers.
Sprinklers,
sorry.
thank you. Yeah.
Thank you with that. Or the 13D is going to be 2 up to 2.
Yes.
So in a compartment. So if your entire house, say you only have 1 sprinkler in each room, you only have to calc the most demanding sprinkler.
Yeah.
But in most cases, you're going to have 2. In a case where there's 2, like in my house, I've got upstairs, it's all 1 per compartment.
Yep.
But then my basement is open, so the hydraulic calcs are based off 2 sprinklers going off.
Yeah. Now, do you do the calculations just because of elevation changes or anything like that? Like if it's an all 1-inch system and you have 2 sprinklers calc in the basement, 1 is going to work on the top floor. Did you run the calc anyways just to make sure?
Yeah, well, when I did it, I did. Well, I was. It was a bit of a the first floor needed a lot more pressure because I was using extended coverage heads.
Oh, okay. What did you go 20 by 20 on?
My living room was like 16 feet wide.
Okay. Yep.
So that's where the extended coverage ended up being. I didn't have to go on to the max of it.
Yep.
It was just I did all side walls.
Oh, okay.
So that's where a lot of the pressures came from.
Yep.
So I ran the calcs for the upstairs too.
Yeah, 16 on a, would you use 4.2s?
Yeah.
Yeah, 14 or 16 PSI, something like that?
I don't know, I remember off the top of my head. Yeah, but I believe
you don't remember?
Yeah, no, I have to pull.
I
can pull a design off
you've
my
ever
phone.
done? Come on, no, you don't have to do that. That's fine. So again, okay, so that's 13 hours, 4 sprinklers, 0.05 density. So half the water requirements of a 13 system. 4 sprinklers, in your design area, half the water supply. When you go to 13, that's when you get into a 0.1 GPM, 0.1 GPM over the 4 most remote sprinklers, not a compartment, as well as you also have to prove the sprinkler listing as well. So there are 2 calculations that are required in your submittal. You have to prove 0.1 GPM out of the sprinkler, and you also have to prove the sprinkler listing because the pressure may be higher to get the lower density.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a mixed match. Very rarely, if you get the 0.1, does the 0.05 work. I've never actually ever had it work or not work out, but still a requirement. And the municipalities around me want to see those calcs.
Yeah. Also talking about calculations, 13 and 13R are both going to require hydraulic calculations.
Yep.
So doing your friction loss and all of that. 13D allows a couple different ways to calculate. One being just doing the hydraulic calculations, but there is a couple other more conservative, easier calculations that you can do, which is basically just how long is the pipe, what is your the difference in elevation, how much are you flowing out of the head, and then basically it's a yes or a no, whether you have enough or you don't.
Yep.
So it is a lot more simple, but it is more conservative, right? So a hydraulic calc will allow you to potentially go smaller on that. But from the 13D perspective, they wanted to make it easier for somebody to design and install these systems.
Yep.
Looking at potentially a plumber, someone who is in the plumbing trades and wants to get into this, not having that huge hurdle of now having to do hydraulic calculations, making it a lot simpler. You're still getting the same protection.
Yep.
It's a little bit more conservative, but it is a lot easier to do.
Yeah, and again, I'm not going to downplay the fact that, it's still fire protection, it's still life safety. Just because technically a plumber can do it doesn't mean a plumber should do it. That's the fitter side.
There's still qualifications. Like, yeah, I mean, the jurisdiction still has to approve.
Yep.
What it could be is you have somebody doing more of the head placement and then someone else running the piping. It all depends on how it is. I haven't necessarily seen it really from that end of somebody not even in the fire protection doing it, but just making it more simple, because even if you're in fire protection, you do sprinkler installs, it could just be a lot easier if you're just cranking these out 100%. To do simple calcs that you're already designing, they work. And you just have to throw these together for each building, especially if you're doing like a development or something like that.
Yep.
So no need to like hand calc them all, especially if you have, say you have whatever 500 homes that they're all slightly different, but maybe you do one calc and that could apply to all of them. Yeah. So
based on the distances and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yep. Now you've sprinklered your home.
Yep.
You retrofitted your house.
Yeah.
With sidewalls, which is nice, but you have an all open basement, so a little bit easier. Yeah. What was the kind of damage that you did? Did you cut holes in the bottom of the walls going in, one at the top and?
Yeah. So the way it was done is I did some work on my house in which I got rid of the chimney, so that opened up a shaft, which I turned into a closet. So that was feeding up to the living room and the kitchen, and then I just used the closet for the bedrooms. And then I had a stairwell that went up that I sprinklered my bathroom. So I was able to get up and hit the bathroom with that. And that was how I got all of it. So it's all just running up in closets. I didn't have to open up any walls or anything.
So speaking of closets and bathrooms, now we can talk a little bit about where the cost savings come from NFPA 13 to 13D.
Yeah. So
in the name of cost savings, we're looking at low impact areas of the home that may not require a sprinkler.
Yeah, so looking at sprinkler locations, the committee looks at what's the life safety benefit of a sprinkler in an area versus that cost, because obviously we know that putting more sprinklers in is going to make the system cost more. So there are situations in which you don't have to put a sprinkler in, say, a 13D system because research has shown and just history has shown that fire starting in certain locations don't prove a threat to life safety. So the same allowance, you don't need a sprinkler in a bathroom if it's less than 55 square feet. So 13R wouldn't require that. 13 doesn't require that in hotels and motels.
Yep.
Actually, all of them. Sorry, I'm talking about closets is hotels and motels. So then also in the 13D system, you don't need a sprinkler in a closet if it's less than 24 square feet. That's same for 13R. 13D, that's only an allowance for hotels and motels.
And that's an important thing to keep in mind too, because that 55 square feet applies across the board within dwelling units itself.
Yeah.
If you have a a condo or something like that where there's a hallway in the middle of an apartment building and there's a closet off of the hallway,
corridor,
the corridor,
still,
bathrooms,
you still need a sprinkler.
You still have to have a sprinkler.
Yeah, we're just talking about dwelling units.
Yep.
And then 13D, like you don't need a sprinkler in an attic.
Yep.
Same thing, 13R wouldn't require sprinklers in attics either. But then we've got places like a garage, 13D wouldn't require sprinkler protection in garages. If you have an unheated vestibule, say like your front door, you've got like a porch that goes off the front,
Yep.
you're not required to put a sprinkler in there, provided you have another way out of the building.
Yep.
So that's just the cost to put like a dry system or a dry like,
sidewall.
that's just running up the cost with you still have another way out of the building, so that's where that's coming into play.
Now, one thing where I've ran into in the past that's not specifically clear would be like a cold cellar underneath that porch. It's more than 24 square feet closet, 13D. Technically, a cold cellar underneath, your front porch goes out and it's just got a storage room under there. Do you guys have those where you guys are from, or is that a strictly Canadian thing?
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well,
Where
do you access it from? From the basement?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a good question. If it's over 24 square feet technically and it's off the basement, then yeah, you would.
You would have to have a sprinkler. It's not an egress pathway. We call them cold rooms, and that's where
if it was
put your beer in the winter.
If it was only it's like a root cellar.
Root cellar. Yeah.
So if it was only accessed from the exterior of the building, then you wouldn't need sprinkler protection.
But it is it's only accessed from
the interior. So I think technically that would require sprinkler protection. Yep. So you would have to find a way to at least get some heat from the basement.
What we've done in the past, and again doesn't technically follow 13D, is we did have a fire door installed.
Mm-hmm.
Add that, and then the fire department said put a smoke alarm in there.
Okay.
Smoke detector.
Yeah.
Just battery operated smoke detector in there, and then they would allow the omission of a sprinkler in the cold cellar. Again, not following the standard, but again, like we're talking about cost savings on the system. There's no real impact to life safety. It's a concrete cellar.
Yeah.
So there was
you have to look at in those cases. That's where you talk to the authority having jurisdiction, and they make those calls on.
Yeah. Obviously, moving past the water supply, talking about emissions and stuff like that. Allowable materials. Getting into listed and unlisted materials, the different aspects. Again, cost savings is the name of the game in that. When you have 13, you're a high building, you're a large building, you're longer egress, fully listed. Everything has to be essentially listed for fire protection, listed for its use. Steel pipe, listed Blaze Master, CPVC, products like that.
Mm-hmm.
When are you allowed to kind of start kicking that down for cheaper alternatives?
So 13D is going to allow you to. The biggest difference is on the piping side is you can go down to 130 psi.
Right.
Rated piping, and that's basically that because you see that in PEX.
Yep.
So PEX, and then like copper and all that stuff. So basically using materials that conform to the plumbing code is acceptable. There are some requirements around the use of PEX, but it is permitted. Usually it's got to be within the wall cavities and protected and things like that. But yeah, you're allowed. You can use PEX. Doesn't have to be listed for that specific use. It just has to be protected, usually like within the wall cavity or something like that. And then there's a CPVC is probably one of the more common that you're seeing because there's a lot of them that are permitted to be can be listed to be exposed, which makes it a lot easier.
There's one. Yeah. And unless Lainey wants to talk about a sponsorship, we're not going to tell you which one it is. It's Blaze Master. I'm just teasing you. But yeah, like obviously, if you're going to install a product, make sure Blaze Master is the only CPVC product that is listed for exposed installation in basements. So it's there's a bunch of different ones out there, but that's the one that's got that stamp for approval.
Which makes it easier for installs in basements, especially if they're going to be left exposed. Which is another thing to talk about with 13D. A lot of the times basements are unfinished. 13D addresses that by saying you install the sprinklers in the basement as if there was a flat ceiling.
Yes. Yep.
and that is it. And then if someone comes in and finishes the basement, then they can that'll finish it off. Which makes it easier because then you don't have to go looking at, what's the impact of the basement construction on the sprinkler activation and all that. You just put it in as if it was a smooth ceiling.
Yeah, absolutely. And okay, so that's, listing of materials. That also gets away, switching from the piping itself, but hanging materials. Hanging is now, for 13D, switched to local plumbing code. So anything the local plumbing code, which, there's a lot of really, really cheap piping supports out there, like the no-block CPVC no-block hangers, 2-hole straps, things like that.
Yeah.
Allows you to get away with anything that's allowed by the plumbing code.
Yeah, again, making it easier for somebody who is maybe more from the plumbing side, they're used to installing that type of piping, to use the same equipment. Also, in a 13D system, we're not looking at extremely high pressures, extremely high flows that we're really restraining the head from that much.
Yep.
You still do need to support it at the head, but we're not looking at it as high, those flows and pressures. So that's what that allowance there is.
Awesome. Now, the reason we're talking about residential sprinklers right now is obviously Home Fire Sprinkler Week.
Yeah.
That's a big initiative that's across North America. There's the Home Fire Sprinkler Coalition of Canada. There's the Home Fire Sprinkler Coalition, which is the same entity, just there's that line in the sand across the thing. They are going to be doing a live side-by-side burn that's going to be streamed on Friday. It's 1 p.m. Eastern time.
Yep.
And you can check it out. They're doing it down in Arizona.
I believe so, yeah.
Yep, down in Arizona. There's a bunch of good guys going down there. Shane Ray from NFPA, which is the host of this event, is going to be down there talking sprinkler and burning things.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Likes to do.
Yeah, if you've never seen a side-by-side burn, I highly recommend.
Yeah, it's going to be on YouTube. I'm going to share it on my social media page, and then you just go into the onto YouTube, Home Fire Sprinkler Coalition, and it'll pop right up 1 p.m. Eastern time. And then as well, the Home Fire Sprinkler Coalition has a bunch of information if you want to share a bunch of. They've got a daily post that they're going to be sharing just to make sure that everybody out there is up to date with home fire sprinklers and awareness and how they can help their communities. And what are your plans for Home Fire Sprinkler Week?
I think I'm going to be sharing just a lot of information that NFPA is putting out. I do have a video that I'll be putting out, just talking about home fire sprinklers a little bit more in detail.
Showing off your install a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit. I like to show it off.
That's not too bad. Yeah. Well, maybe this summer there we'll be throwing pipe in our house here. Now that we moved in.
Yeah.
Awesome. Shawn, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks.